When I was younger, my dad used to say that divided government is good, and that the reason that it's difficult to pass laws in this country is on purpose. And if you look at the Constitution, there was a lot of care taken to put into the system checks and balances and separation of powers and so forth, so that there wouldn't be shocks to the system that were without reason. And so divided government, I believe, is good. However, the division of that government right now is between a party that wants a really, really big government and a party that wants a really big government, maybe a medium big government. So I think that a divided government is good if you have a party that wants a limited government and a party that wants a small government, or a party that wants a limited government and a party that wants a slightly less limited government. There's some sort of balance in there that works out. And maybe that even should not be the way that the thing breaks down. Maybe there shouldn't be contention on that point. Maybe it's what kind of limited government we should have. However, today we have a massive government on every single level of the spectrum. And if you're going to have a government that's active in the lives of people, it should be at the local level or the at the level of the county. It should not be at the federal level. That's the last place that it should be, precisely because of what's going on now, is that it creates a monopoly on the sort of government that you can have. And the federal government originally, because of the enumerated powers, was very, very tightly defined on what it could do, so that it didn't do the sort of things it's doing today. So I think divided government is good. We should go back to having it as healthy that we have a divided government, and understanding that we don't need to be so polarized that we can't talk to each other, because the whole nature of differences between people is that they specialize economically, but also somebody might know something you don't know. They might have a perspective you don't have, and so they can teach you things that you have yet to learn. And so when we vilify political division, we create antagonism that is unhealthy. There is a healthy balance. We should go back to understanding that. However, that balance should crux on a limited government and not a massive government, because the last several administrations have all gone without balancing the budget. They have all gone with falling fertility rates. I mean, the last time we had fertility rates really going back to the level of maintenance of above 2.12 was maybe Clinton with Republicans in Congress. And then before that, we hadn't seen it until the late 60s. And yeah, as soon as Richard Nixon took over and you had the very deep blue House of Representatives and Senate, this was before they flushed into both the House and the Senate in the Gingrich Revolution. I mean, they had the Senate in the 80s, but there are a very few periods where we've had positive fertility. And it's good that that is getting traction nowadays, because it's important that we do pass on our population, because right now, contextually within the system that we have, you cannot sustain a welfare state without increasing the population, and without having people working as a high number of people working as a proportion of the population. So there is contextually as well a good sign that labor force participation is barely coming back to where it was before COVID. However, it seems as if the economy is entering stagflation, and so you're going to see probably some layoffs here soon. You're already seeing signs of that in other sectors of the economy. Tech, you're seeing layoffs. You're seeing Southwest pull out of New York. We saw a glimpse, a scintillating little degree with the failure of that bank in Silicon Valley. But we might be at the top of an economic cycle, and it might be coming down. We've seen a slowdown, and CPI is outpacing by about 1.8%. Absolutely. It is outpacing GDP growth, which itself isn't adjusted for inflation. we saw 1.6% growth in GDP the first quarter of this year, and we saw a 3.4% increase in CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, which is how much people are paying for goods in the first quarter of this year. So you're actually seeing stagflation, and so that's not good. We haven't seen that for a while. So suffice it to say, divided government is good. The divide needs to be over how we can limit government and have an optimal functioning governing force in society. We cannot have this massive do-all machine. That is a failure. It has always failed. It failed in the Soviet Union. It failed in Sweden before they changed it. It's failed in a lot of places. They figured out what works: optimally sized government, which is, on the whole, about 14 to 18% of the economy altogether, maybe even towards the low 20s. But right now we have close to double that. We're brushing up on 40%, which is almost as high as it was by the time Margaret Thatcher finished her tenure between 1979 to 1990. So she had been working with close to 50% of government being part of the economy in Britain. That's horrible, and I think that's where Democrats want to take us these days. And so by the time she was done in 1990, she had gotten it down to the high 30s. And that's where we're basically there right now, which is really unhealthy. And you're seeing our birth rates fall to where theirs were back in the early 90s because of the size of government. And I very much strongly see in the data a correlation between the size of government and the size of expansion of your family, of human beings in general. So we need to go back to the division being appropriate. We need to go back to good exchange, healthy exchange of information, and we need to understand that there is an optimal size of government, not just from the perspective of taxation with the Laffer curve, but also from the perspective of spending, because you have your income and you have your expenses. We need to go back to understanding as well that that expenses have their place as well, that government cannot spend beyond its means, that it cannot tax beyond its means, and that we need to be, as a society, healthy, and we need to use cash for what we want to pay for. We can't use inordinate amounts of debt to pay for bad debt, as they say, as Dave Ramsey would say, or other people. You know, like, it's silly, but I read this book, Accounting for Dummies. Or I was listening to an audiobook while I was working, and it mentions good debt versus bad debt. What is good debt? Good debt is the type of debt that once you invest in it, it actually pays you back, or it allows you to earn more in very real terms, not in some ethereal notion, but truly it does. It's like a government paying for a bridge, or paying to buy new land, versus government paying for welfare, or paying for stimulus checks, or paying to prop up companies that they owe political favors to. No, that's bad debt. We should not be doing that. And so even those sort of things, those should be happening at the local level. They shouldn't be federal. We already know what the federal government should be doing because the Constitution tells us. They say exactly what they intend for that thing to do. And if you wanted it to do otherwise, you need to go back and change the Constitution. The reason it changed in 1937 was because of the barrage of abuse, frankly, that FDR was giving to the Supreme Court. But I believe that ruling was foolish, and I don't think that was in keeping with the Constitution. We need to go back to a healthy political society, well-functioning, intelligent, and we need to prize the values that made us great and go back to that. And I think that if we do, we can recover this country, we can get back to solvency, and we can get back to growing as human beings in a great society. So that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for watching.